Hi, Roxanne.
Hi, Cheryl. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. So, we met through a coaching program, and I got to know you so well through it and your life and all your adventures. And I'm just so fascinated by everything that you've been up to and what a creative soul you are.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and so I wanted to get to know your story more and for you to inspire our listeners and help them get out of their comfort zone with your experiences and stories. Um, so your creativity comes in so many different forms, poetry, travel blogs, doing gratitude journeys, and now you're doing a project on turning 50. Can you tell us more about that?
Um, yeah, so it's it's interesting, and we might get into it a little bit later, that you call me creative because for such a long time I never really considered it creativity. So yeah, so it's an honor to be here just to share that because I think that will connect with people that maybe don't necessarily see what they're doing as creative. So the 50 project that I'm doing right now, so I turned 50 next month. And I was just finding that I had a lot of like stuff coming up with that number. And so it's something I've always kind of done. I don't know when it started, is I kind of make these projects or challenges or games for myself. And, I call it different things at different times. And it's just like I set a period of time, like a week or a month or a year. And maybe it's for consistency. I don't know. Maybe it's just for self-expression. I'm not sure, but I've always kind of done these things, and it's usually been just a very personal thing. Like I'm the only one tracking it, I'm the only one kind of expressing and seeing this. But for whatever reason, in the past 10 years, some of these projects I just felt the need to share, and I didn't know why. And like the first one was the gratitude journey, which probably was about 10 years ago that I started that. And I opened up an Instagram account for the first time because I felt like it had to get out there, and not necessarily that I needed people to see it. It's just, I don't know, I felt like it had to be not, I don't want to seem more than about me. It was just, maybe it was my way of releasing because it had just been so internal, all these projects and stuff that I had done. So the gratitude journey was the first one. And then throughout the years, there was things that I was continuing to do personally, but ones that I'd be like, I feel like I need to share that. I don't know why, but I need to do that. So this 50 project, I call it the 50 to 50. And so, like I said, there's a lot of stuff coming up with this number that's coming up. On the one hand, I do know it's a celebration, like it's a half a century. And, I have someone that passed away a couple of years ago that didn't get to have this celebration. So I know what a big deal it should be on the one hand. But on the other hand, there is a lot of sadness and kind of grief that's coming up with it. You know, when I turned 30, when I turned 40, I kind of had similar things, but it was so much easier then to be like, it's just a number, it doesn't matter. And that is also true with 50. It is a number. It doesn't, it means whatever you want it to mean. But especially as women, I mean, we have hormones that are changing. And so we're feeling it physically. It's affecting our emotions and our mental health sometimes. So, yes, it's a number, but it's also we're having this visceral experience that is telling us this is stepping into a new phase of life. And that, yes, can be celebratory, but stepping into something new is also letting go of something that you have been used to for so long. So, this stuff was all coming out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing 50 before 50. And it's not going to be just about gratitude and not just about what I've learned. It's going to be, whatever I'm experiencing on that particular day. And maybe it's a positive thing, maybe it's a sadness, a grief. I just wanted to hold space for this period of time that feels important that's coming up. And it was one of those things too, again, where it was like, I feel like I need to share this. I don't really want to,
Yeah.
but it just feels like it needs, I need to do this to release it for whatever reason. I'm just going to trust that, again, if anyone reads it or not, it doesn't matter. I just need to get it out. And maybe it's a healing thing for me. I don't know. So that's what I'm doing. That's kind of my personal project I have now is the 50 to 50. So I think I'm on day 10 today. So 40 more days till I turn 50.
Oh my goodness. That's really exciting. And I love how you're not attached to like the outcomes, because I feel like a lot of people and creatives, they're attached to what people will say if they post something, or if they get enough likes, or,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. There's just so many things that we can be attached to, and
Yeah.
you've let go of that. It's just a release for you. And I feel like that's something a lot of creatives need to do.
Yeah.
Just release, like just let
Yeah.
it out, and whatever happens happens.
Yeah.
What's important is you're letting go of it.
Yeah. And I do feel like I see the artwork that you do, and like I love your art, and I admire you for putting it out there, and that it is kind of a way that like it is your career. And I totally commend you for that. And I feel like for me doing it as a person, I think it's a little bit easier for me to let that go, because I don't have something like,
Yeah.
it's just different. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying for creatives, to release things. But sometimes, in my personal experience anyways, I feel pressure sometimes if it's not a personal thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I totally get it. And to put yourself in that vulnerable space,
Yeah.
it's not easy.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started posting and we were talking about our feelings about social media, I was so nervous and I was like, should I push it? Should I not? And I just did it really
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there wasn't much of a reaction. It was very, whatever. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But it's inspiring for me because, like, I just a few years away from 50, and it's there are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like it's just gone
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
so quickly. And so it's something I would consider doing when I'm about to get there, because yeah, there are all these different emotions that you go
Mhm.
through
Yeah, for
and
sure.
changes.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool you're doing this.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that we share similar stories. So, like one of the posts that I did in one of the days previously was I shared my experience over the past, 50 years. I had an experience where I went through infertility treatment, and I ultimately came to the realization that I I never did really want kids. And it was interesting because, I had some conversations with different people behind the scenes, and they're like, it's just this thing that people don't talk about. Like there is more talk about it now, but back then when I was doing it, nobody was talking. It was just like this taboo thing. And, you know, we forget that just by sharing our stories, which don't necessarily feel like anything to us, can just be like, can help other people relate and just feel like they're not alone.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And that's been the beauty of social media. I mean, there's some negatives and there's
Yes.
positives, but
Yeah.
people becoming more vulnerable and where you don't feel like you're the only one going
Yeah.
through this experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I remember you took an art class in another country. Can you remind us where that was? And you gained so much insight from that experience. Can you please
Yeah,
share?
I loved that. Yeah, it was so it's actually similar to this podcast. I was really nervous to get on here and do this podcast. So elements of this are reminding me of that experience. And so my husband and I, it was when, everything was starting to open up and we were allowed to travel again. So it was our first trip, and we went to Oaxaca, Mexico, and we were in the city of Oaxaca, and just kind of wandering around doing our thing. And I like to do different things in different places, and Oaxaca is just this magical place amazing food. It's very cultural, full of art. And I saw a sign, and it was just advertising this workshop for a wood print block workshop. I think it was like a 4-hour workshop. And I saw the sign, and my first thought was, well, this looks interesting. And immediately my second thought was, well, I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. I can't do this. And, it still strikes me when I think about it, how quickly that thought came in. And so I didn't really say anything to my husband. I just kind of sat with it for a while, and we were wandering around town. I kept seeing this poster. So I finally kind of said to him, I was like, I saw this workshop. I think I'm going to do it. Do you want to do it with me? And part of me really wanted him to do it with me because I just kind of wanted that support. But my husband is awesome because he is, I think, more intuitive than he realizes he is. And he's just like, if you want me to do it with you, I will. But so he was in art school before he's in the career that he is in now. And he's done like printing stuff. He's like, it's not that I'm not interested. It's just, it's an experience I feel like I've had and I don't necessarily need. And I kind of feel like you should do this on your own.
Wow.
And so, that kind of freaked me out, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I signed up for the workshop, and I think it was like the next day. But even though I had made that decision, that whole 24 hours or whatever it was, I was kind of trying to think of ways I could get out of it. And so like simple things, like we were told to bring a picture of, what we wanted to do on this wood block. And I chose to be overwhelmed into finding this picture. And so again, my husband talked me through it, kind of helped me find some options. And right to the minute that I got to the studio, I was like, okay, how can I not do this? How can I get out of this? But force myself to get in. And I am someone who loves learning. So I take lots of different courses and stuff. So I'm just like, okay, once I get there, then I'll feel more comfortable. I'll be in my safe space. I'll be in my comfort zone. And so I got there, and it was like this beautiful studio that had an open space, and then just like different rooms where different artists had their spaces. But there was just like there's people everywhere, and I didn't know even who was teaching the workshop. It was just like, I expected I get there, the workshop starts, but it was just so loosey-goosey. And I had to ask people, are you running the workshop? Are you? And like people didn't know what I was talking about. And like even then I was like, okay, well, I can leave. No one's going to notice, but I forced myself to find the artist. And, he was a younger guy and his artwork was amazing. But I am a natural teacher, and a lot of the work I've done job wise has to do with teaching. So I know that teaching, just because you're good at something, doesn't necessarily mean you have the skills to be a teacher. So he was a great artist. He was not really a teacher. So he sat me down, and again, I was at this table with other people. I don't know who was part of the workshop or who wasn't. And so he kind of gave me these vague instructions, and then he'd take off. And so I'm sitting there and I'm doing, kind of muddling my way through. And probably I was there for probably about 4 hours, but those first 2 hours, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I have any guidance. No one's going to notice if I leave. No one's probably, I'd already paid my 20 or 40 bucks or whatever it was. I'm like, no one's going to, care if I leave. So I had to force myself for those 2 hours to just sit there in this discomfort with that story in the back of my mind. You're not creative, you're not an artist. And I just kind of did whatever. And at about the 2 hour mark, my husband came in just to check in to see what was going on. And so he is also kind of a natural teacher. So he was able to give me a little bit of guidance as well. And so I did my thing and found the guy when it came to time to print this thing, and printed it. And I just, it turned out better than I expected it to. And I had to leave it overnight to dry, and then I went to pick it up. But I just remember seeing it come off the printing press, and I was like, I did that. I am creative. And I just realized how I was associating creativity with visual art. So, I am very creative in many ways. Like I am a writer. Like I said, I'm a teacher and lesson planning. Like I loved lesson planning. I was very creative in that. And it was just like, yeah, I was thinking that just because I couldn't draw how I thought I could draw, or, it was just interesting that I was like, I am very creative, but I have never acknowledged that. I think partly because it was just so innate and so natural to me that it's just like, well, that's just what I do. But I have this print now. I got two of the prints, and one's hanging up and it's framed, and my husband made me sign it. And, it's actually right in front of me. And it's just like, I'm just so proud. It turned out so much better than I thought it would. It taught me some lessons that I still go forward with. And like, it doesn't matter if it's a visual thing. I am creative just in my being and how I express myself. And, I don't think we sometimes give ourselves credit for that.
Yes.
So
I
I know in your podcast, you kind of say, everybody is creative.
Yeah.
And yes, it is, but sometimes we don't recognize our own creativity.
Right. And when we're like, because I have students ranging from 5 to, 65.
Yeah.
And what I notice is the kids, they are like, I mean, they'll just splatter paint on paper and be like, wow, look what
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Right. And you go from that self-confidence to I see my older students and they're like, that is horrible. That's
Yeah.
terrible. And I
Yeah.
notice it as we get older, our self-confidence goes lower and lower,
Yeah.
and we just lose that will to, and it might be something an adult might say, a parent might say that to their child, because I've seen it before where they're like, what, that's terrible. Like, what is
Yeah.
that? Or
Yeah.
they'll talk to me about like, my kid made this and it was horrible. You need to work on this, and that. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, please don't say that to your child.
Yes. Yes.
You don't have to say that's beautiful, that's wonderful, but like, oh, I see you made, swirls, and what does that mean? And,
Yeah.
what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe we're all born creative. And for you to be in that discomfort and go through those emotions,
Yeah.
and I talk about with my daughter, I've seen her go through the discomfort and like crumple the paper and throw it and then start all over again and feel better about what she created like the third round.
Yeah.
So I just love hearing your story. And I hope more people end up doing that and see that they're creative in different forms. It's not
Yes.
just painting,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
and like I said, it's just for me, anyways, my experience is recognizing that I didn't realize I was creative because it just comes natural. And so it's just like, well, this making art, that should be more difficult. Being creative, that should be more difficult, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, we met in a coaching program. How did being in that program affect the way you live life now? I notice you have been taking a lot more risks and adventures. I love seeing your travel journeys and like the joy I see. I love to travel, and I
Yeah.
feel like it inspires my creativity in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And I see
Yeah.
you write poetry, that goes along
Yeah.
with the picture that you post.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many things I got from that program we did together. One, so I think one of the ones that I will bring in that I think kind of relates to what we're talking about is just I had this idea, or, I'm coming out with this idea that I'm unique, but I'm also not special, which I know kind of sounds confusing, but I realized, like I said, the creativity, I didn't even realize how unique that was and how I express myself in a way that is so different than how other people do. And how I am is different than how anyone will ever be, past or future. So I am unique, but I'm not special. And That I just mean with like what we were talking about with, going through 50. Sometimes you feel like you're the only one that's experiencing that, or infertility, you feel like you're the only one that's going through that. And so in that coaching program, like I really appreciated how vulnerable people were willing to be and what a safe space and safe container it was for us to be able to do that. Because, and I don't think I even shared it, but I used to struggle because I'm a strong introvert. I need time to myself. But I was also really shy when I was young, and I tend to be more of an observer of life than I am a chatter. And I felt like that made me different. And, I was so alone and no one could understand that. And then someone kind of shared that. And I looked at it and I was like, that's, I could have said that. That could have been me. This thing that for like 35 years, I felt like I was all alone and nobody understood me. And so it was like, okay, I'm not special, but in a good way. There's other people having this experience. And it was just so interesting in that program because, it didn't matter how out there something was. Someone would be like, this is my experience. I feel weird. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I don't fit in. And there'd be like 50 people raising their hands and they're like, no, that's exactly my experience too. So again, I think we sometimes feel alone and forget that we're all having this human experience. And yes, we have our own journeys and we're going at our own paces. But those times when you feel like you're alone and you can't talk about things, there's absolutely someone else out there that is having that same experience and you don't have to feel alone. And
Nice.
so that's something that I really carry with me, is just reminding myself that I'm special, I'm worthy, I'm needed, but I'm also, when I feel like I don't belong, that is just not true.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I
Mhm.
was very much an introvert as well, and quiet, and yeah, um that was me. Um one thing you mentioned in a post was that being calm is one of your superpowers. It's mine as well. And I never thought of it that way. Can you go deeper into that concept? I just love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And it's funny. So you had mentioned that, that was also your superpower, and someone else that I know had also kind of said that too. And it's like, we can see, again, my experience is I can see instantly in others things, but for myself, it's so hard because when both of you made that comment, I was like, well, yeah, obviously, it's so obvious to me that that is your superpower. But so I had someone recently, I was in a yoga class and, I'm at this new studio. And so I didn't know this person very well. And they kind of turned to me at the end of practice and she's just like, you have such grounding energy. And it was just calm practicing beside you. And I've had people, often strangers, tell me that throughout my life. And it was really confusing for me, especially in my younger years, because, I am an introvert. I need that time alone, but I'm also very introspective and how I process things. I just need to be alone and in my own energy at first. But along with that means that sometimes I can get in my head and thoughts can spin. And when I wasn't, before I practiced yoga and did breath work, I didn't necessarily understand that. And so I would get stuck in my head and I would feel chaotic, yet someone would still turn to me and say, you're so calming. And it was so confusing because it's like, well, I do not feel calm internally. What is going on? And so again, we had kind of talked about how some creativity is just innate within you. I just feel like this calmness is just something I naturally project. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to think, okay, I need to be calm in this. It just comes out, even if I don't necessarily feel it. And so there was a kind of an emotional situation that I was involved in at the beginning of the year. And this is what really had me reflecting on this is I was just in this group of people. There's some emotional stuff going on. And I was sitting there and I was like, what do I do? But it was a situation where there was really nothing for me to do. But I realized that my job there was just to be there.
Yeah.
Um, just my presence there was bringing the energy down a bit, bringing the emotions down a little bit. And I didn't have to control it. I didn't have to do it. If I wasn't there, I'm sure it would have still been fine. But me being there just, calm things down a little bit. And that was my only job. I think sometimes we think we need to do things. And some people, their superpower is absolutely, they are the doers and that's their path and their purpose to go out and do. But that's not for everybody. Sometimes just being there, that's your job. That's enough. And, just accepting that that's what it is. So that's why I consider it a superpower. It's, again, I can definitely see that superpower in you. I have no doubts that that is one of your superpowers. But it's not always acknowledged because it's not something we do. It's just we're there, and that's the power.
Yeah. Your superpower can come in so many different forms, not
Yes.
just being calm. You could have that warrior spirit,
Yeah.
or I don't know, it just could come in so many different shapes and forms. So,
Yeah.
but it's nice to think of it that way, you
Yeah.
know.
And like they're all needed. Like, we do live in a Western society which sometimes values that go out and do things, be the warrior, be the fighter.
Mm.
And absolutely we need those superpowers and those superheroes, but we also need the people that are just there to just calm things down.
100%. What do you think our audience can do today to get out of their fears and take more chances?
So this one, I feel like in this 50-day project, I've been using the word ironic has come up a lot. And so what I'm going to share feels ironic to me. And it seems so simple, but it is something that has always kind of felt difficult to me. And it's just to trust yourself. And I sometimes hate hearing that because, again, sometimes I can get in my head and it's like, well, how do I do that? Um, and you just know. So the example I have is just, again, this coming onto this podcast with you, having this chat with you. You reached out to me, and again, like in Oaxaca, that first thing was, well, I have nothing to share. I can't do that. But I just had this feeling that it freaks me out, but I have to do this. And whether it's because, someone's going to hear this and what I say is going to twig something in them, or, you know, what I share is going to bring something in you that you say that someone's going to hear, then they need to hear that. Maybe it's just, I just need to be here with your superpower energy and we just need to be here even if nobody hears this episode. It's just, I don't understand it. I think that's why it's hard for me to give this advice or wisdom. But I know, again, reflecting on my last years, is I have trusted myself more than I thought I have. And you just have to trust yourself, even though sometimes it feels like you're not.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's helpful, but that has been my
Perfect.
experience, which again feels so ironic to me.
Yeah. I love that. And do you have any words of wisdom for our creative spirits out there?
So I like to work with quotes sometimes, just things that jump out at me.
Oh, I
And
love
so,
quotes. Yeah.
yeah, one that I've been leaning into, and it's been quite a few months now, is I read a book by Matt Haig called The Midnight Library.
Mm,
And this quote just jumped out to me, and it was just says, "Don't underestimate the big importance of small things." And so for me, I feel like my journey, I my life has been lived in a softer, more gentler, kind of slower pace, which sometimes I have seen as not valuable, for different stories or whatever reasons. But I do really strive to see the magic in the mundane, to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to, I love, I do go on lots of trips. I have opportunities to travel a lot. So I take them, and those are big things. But I think it's also the little things, just the day to day that just seem so important or unimportant that are actually really important.
Yeah. Thank you, Roxanne, for being here today. I know it was, out of your comfort zone, and I just love that you jumped in and you're like, yeah, let's do this. And that's life. There's some things that seem really scary, and then you go through it. How was it?
Oh, it was great. Like I am very honored that you asked me, you gave me some things to reflect on. I had some ahas. And so, I'm very thankful for this experience. And I also just wanted to commend you for the things you do. Like the art that you do is amazing. The message that you have with your art, and even just the message you have with this podcast is just, spreading the light, and everyone has the light. And I feel like that is so important. And so I just want to commend you for that work as well, Cheryl.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure actually talking to you, and getting to know
Yeah.
you even better.
Yeah.
And I hope we connect even more, and that our I know they will get their own insights and inspiration.
Yeah.
And yeah, can't wait to put this out there.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Cheryl.